Welcome back to FCNYC. My name is Ben Chan. It's time to talk about boxing. Usually I'd be here with Aris Pina. He's at the dentist again. Last week he had a tooth pulled, so today he went back for a checkup. Hopefully everything is fine. Aris, we need you back here so people can stop looking at my ugly face. So anyway, there's a lot to talk about, a lot of boxing news. Actually, not that much news. I don't have that much to say about this weekend's fight, but let's talk about what happened last weekend. We had Manny Pacquiao versus Juan Manuel Marquez. We had their third fight, and in the interest of full disclosure, Aris and I, we did the punch down for the fight, and I was counting the punches that Marquez threw and landed on Pacquiao. You know, during the fight, I thought that Marquez landed the better punches. I thought that he gave away some rounds, though, because he fought as a counterpuncher, and as counterpunchers feed off the aggression of the other fighter, and Pacquiao was trying to come forward all night. He wasn't having a lot of luck, but he was landing punches, not as effective as Marquez's. But I think that there were some rounds where Marquez couldn't totally control the aggression of Pacquiao, and I think Pacquiao outworked Marquez in some of those rounds. That said, it felt like Marquez won the fight. It felt that way because Marquez outperformed his expectations, and Pacquiao underperformed because people thought that, or most people were saying, Pacquiao was going to take Marquez out, and Marquez was going to get knocked out maybe for the first time in his career. That's not what happened. Marquez put on a masterclass in counter punching. And when I went home and watched the fight, because when I'm doing punch zone, I'm actually not really scoring the fight in my head. I'm just paying attention to what my fighter lands on the other guy. That's all I'm paying attention to. So when I went back and I watched the fight in its entirety and scored each round, I had it a draw. But I had 6 rounds that could have gone out of the way. The reason why I had a draw was because I gave Pacquiao 4 of the rounds and I gave Marquez 2 of the rounds. Now I'm not going to argue with anybody that had Marquez winning, and I'm not going to argue with anybody that had a draw. I think I can see Pacquiao winning. I think that's it's a harder argument to make, but I had a draw. I had it 6-6. You know, so everybody that says that Marquez got robbed, I kind of understand where they're coming from, because in 2 very close fights, and actually 3 very close fights, they fought 3 fights. The first fight was a draw, and the last 2 fights that were victories, that were close decisions that went to Pacquiao. Pacquiao was the one that got the benefit of the doubt, so I can see why Marquez felt that it was a robbery. I can see why people who cheer for Marquez said it was a robbery. But if you're just looking at this fight, if you're just scoring this fight, it was so close that it's really hard to call it a legit robbery. This wasn't Aris Lady Lara versus Paul Williams. It's not that kind of robbery. It was just a close fight. And this time Pacquiao got the decision. Don't get me wrong, I think 116-112 was a big stretch. I didn't see Pacquiao winning that many rounds. But like I said, I had it a draw. All credit to Marquez. He was the one who made Pacquiao look off of his game. He was the one that made Pacquiao tentative. It also seemed, though, that Pacquiao was having trouble pulling the trigger. After the fight, he said that he was cramping. Now, this is something that I think he said happened with the Margarito fight. He definitely said it happened in the Mosley fight, and now he's saying it happened in the Marquez fight. This is what gives me pause to say, well, maybe Pacquiao's prime is over. Maybe he's definitely lost a step or 2. Maybe the fast twitch leg muscles that gave him his explosiveness just aren't there anymore. Maybe it's time for Pacquiao to think about retiring, which he said I think he was going to do in 2013 anyway. We'll see what he has left in the tank, but at the beginning of the week, the rumor the announcement was that Pacquiao was going to forego fighting Mayweather, and that he had unfinished business with Marquez, and they were going to do it a 4th time. Now, Freddie Roach did an interview with ESPN, and he says, no, the Mayweather fight is on. This is the fight that Pacquiao wants. It seems like Mayweather wants the May 5th fight. Maybe this is as close as they come to making the fight. I don't know. And there's a lot to be done in terms of negotiating. Marquez doesn't know whether he's going to retire or not, because he's understandably angry about the decision. And so we'll see what happens. In terms of Pacquiao, though, we'll see what he does. Maybe this was just a case of him overtraining for this fight. Maybe he didn't train enough, or maybe he doesn't have it anymore. He's still a really, really good fighter, but he's not the tornado that we're that we used to see in the past. So there's a part of me that's sad that he's not the Tornado anymore, but there's another part of me is just glad that we got to witness it. And there's a big part of me that's happy that actually we get to see the brilliance of Juan Manuel Marquez. We'll see what happens in the next coming months with these three guys. Again, Mayweather said May 5th, I'd love to fight Pacquiao. We'll see if that fight gets made. Now, also on the Pacquiao-Marquez 3 fight card, we had an undercard. We had Timothy Bradley TKOing Joel Casamayor, El Sapia, the legend, well, maybe not the legend, but the veteran, the Grizzly veteran who attempted to land his share of low blows, attempted to use his craftiness, in other words, attempted to be dirty with his head and everything. Eventually, Bradley took him out, or TKO'd him in 8 rounds, and then today it was announced that Casamayor tested positive for marijuana, so he might lose his entire purse for the fight. Personally, I don't look at marijuana as a performance-enhancing drug, so yeah, we'll see. But I don't know. This fight really didn't do a lot to shake up things in the junior welterweight division. Maybe it keeps Bradley relevant in the Pacquiao sweepstakes if that fight ever happens. So let's move on to another fight on the undercard that was actually very exciting. We had Mike Alvarado TKOing Brendan Prescott in the 10th round. Now, this was a very, very action-filled fight. It was back and forth. It seemed like in the beginning that Prescott came out, took control of the fight, was fighting at the right distance, he jumped on Mike Alvarado and seemed to have him stunned and maybe even hurt at times early in the fight. And then Alvarado slowly fought his way back into the fight. He made it a phone booth fight, and for some reason, Brendan Prescott acquiesced and fought shoulder to shoulder with Alvarado, even though he was doing better at a distance. Now, I was with people that were watching the fight, and they were complaining, why is Brendan Prescott fighting this way? It's because he's Brendan Prescott. That's the way he is. He isn't the smartest, craftiest boxer out there. He's a guy that fights and does foolish things in the ring, and this time his insistence on fighting Alvarado's fight got him TKO'd seconds before the end of the fight, actually, in the 10th round. So this was a big win for Alvarado because he showcased himself and he showed that, yes, he is a tough fighter. He beat a veteran, and maybe he's ready to take another step up. For Brendan Prescott, he certainly fought well in his loss, so maybe he continues to be a gatekeeper for other fighters. And then on the first fight of the night, we had Luis Cruz versus Juan Carlos Burgos, and we had Burgos winning a majority decision in over 10 rounds. And this was a very good fight between two young guys. Burgos is, I believe, 23, and Cruz is 26, and Puerto Rican versus a Mexican fighter, so you always have that kind of attention in there. And this was a back and forth fight, and we have both guys trying to do their thing. I think at the end it was Burgos' busyness and his body punching, and Cruz was just a little bit too crude. So Burgos outboxed him, and this was a good win for him. And we'll see what happens next. So that wraps up the Pacquiao-Marquez 3 fight card, and let's move on to this week. We have the replay of Manny Pacquiao versus Juan Manuel Marquez. If you missed it, it's going to be on HBO on Saturday night. And following that, we're going to have a live fight. It's going to be Julio Cesar Chavez versus Peter Manfredo. Honestly, I don't really have much analysis about this fight because I'm not that excited about this fight. Chavez has a belt at middleweight. He hasn't fought the person that a lot of people believe is the man at middleweight, and that man is Sergio Martinez, and it kind of seems like he's avoiding Sergio Martinez, and he's fighting a guy in Peter Manfredo that's not Sergio Martinez. So Chavez can go around telling everybody that he's the middleweight champion, but I think everybody knows who the real middleweight champion is. And he's not even fighting, I think, one of the top guys in the division. There are some good European fighters out there. There's some young prospects out there, pretty good, even though middleweight is kind of a barren division right now. And so honestly, I think that this might end up being a good fight because it's two guys who kind of are even, I would say, are about even at skill level. It seems like Manfredo has been around forever, since the Contender. When I believe the first season, he was the runner-up. He lost to Sergio Mora, and we've seen Manfredo in the ring with the likes of Joe Calzaghe. So he's got some experience, and he's kind of a guy. He's a blue collar fighter. He's got some skill, and maybe he can out hustle Chavez. Chavez is a guy who has some skill too. He's the son of the legend Julio Cesar Chavez, and he's young. Maybe he's hit a ceiling. Maybe he hasn't. Maybe he's really better than Manfredo. Maybe he's got something that we haven't seen yet. I don't know. I think he's hit a ceiling. I expect some good back and forth action in this fight. Neither of these guys is very heavy-handed, so I don't think we're going to see a knockout. So tune in, watch the Pacquiao-Marquez replay if you missed it the first time, and then stay tuned for the Julio Cesar Chavez versus PD Manfredo card. And there's another bit of boxing news I want to talk about before we get off the air. The fight that I was personally looking forward to, Antonio Margarito versus Miguel Cotto. And this was supposed to be at Madison Square Garden on December 3rd. It's gonna be a big fight. There's gonna be a lot of Puerto Rican fans coming out of New York, a lot of the Mexican fans coming out from Margarito. Now it looks like it might not happen in New York. Now the story is that there's been some issues regarding Margarito and his surgically repaired eye. If you remember, he fought Manny Pacquiao in 2010, and Pacquiao bashed his face in, and in the process ended up breaking his orbital bone. And as a result, Margarito had surgery. I think he had a cataract in there, and he says it's fine. His surgeon says it's fine, but there's some questions about whether that eye is going to hold up in a fight, or whether he should be allowed in a boxing ring. And New York, the New York State Athletic Commission, being one of the stricter commissions, has raised some questions about this. They've raised, and now this is all coming out, and it's less than 20 days before the fight, so it looks like the rumor is they're going to move the card somewhere else. They might do it in Mississippi, they might do it in Texas, or somewhere that has a commission, an athletic commission, that's not as tight as New York's. This will be very disappointing if the fight doesn't happen in New York. I know there were a lot of people looking forward to being there. I was looking forward to the atmosphere in the Garden. Whenever you get Miguel Cotto versus anybody, it's going to be crazy. But if you have him versus a Mexican fighter, there's so many Mexicans in New York, it's going to be a good event. But at the same time, you have to think about Margarito's health. And, he is the villain. He has the best scowl in boxing. But if that eye isn't going to hold up, if people don't think that eye is going to hold up, then he shouldn't be in the boxing ring. As much as there were a lot of people who would love to see Miguel Cotto avenge his loss to Margarito. So this is very much a downer. We'll see what happens in the end. So that's all we have for this week. Thanks for tuning in to Fight City, and good night.